Are we being serious? Really? This is what's happening?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm bringing you your news analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates, from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Hit the subscribe button. Thank you for tuning in as you always do. And you heard the intro. It wasn't one of those witty intros that I usually have. And folks, I just don't know at this point about what is going on with this team. I don't know what to even say about what I watched yesterday. And I was going to record a show yesterday. We had two on Monday. Go check those out. We had one on Tuesday. I didn't want to get on here and discuss anything of what I'm going to discuss today on this show yesterday, and I let it marinate for a little bit before you see this today. Just from what happened yesterday, if you didn't know, the Pittsburgh Pirates were up 10-3 in the seventh inning yesterday. And if you decided to turn your television off at that point, then you'd probably be a pretty happy camper. Because the Pittsburgh Pirates after that decided they wanted to do something that they had never done before, which is blow a 7+ run lead in the seventh inning or later and lose in the way and the fashion that they did, losing 14-10 against the Chicago Cubs on Wednesday afternoon. This was a game, mind you, if you need the reminder, where Paul Skeens only gave up 3 earned runs and pitched pretty well. I mean, he was in line for the victory when he exited the game. O'Neal Cruz was getting his first start in center field and for all intents and purposes looked okay in his first day out there. The offense was firing on all cylinders and just hitting Kyle Hendricks everywhere. The professor was getting taught by the student again. And you scored 10 runs and you lost 14-10. And if you remember, when me and Gary discussed this series on Monday, we said that you have to get after this pitching staff. And truthfully, they kind of did. From the starters to the bullpen. I mean, they scored 24 runs in 3 games. The Pittsburgh Pirates did. 24 runs in 3 games. And did not win one of them. They gave up 41 runs in the past 3 days to the Chicago Cubs. And at this point, and I've been saying this on the show already, the playoffs are done. You don't even need to think about that anymore. And I even said earlier this week that I think a 500 season is still in the cards, or an above 500 season is still in the cards. Well, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now 62-71, meaning that they could only lose 9 more games the rest of the year if they wanted to be above 500. And it's just the wheels have fallen off, folks. They were driving on the highway. They were driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and the wheels just fell off. They paid the toll booth. They did everything that you need to do. And one day, the wheels just fell off of this team, who is now, to put this into further context, only a game and a half ahead of the Washington Nationals. The Washington Nationals, who sold at the deadline, who admitted that they were not making the postseason, who admitted that they still have probably a year or two before they can think about being a serious contender. And at this point, you are a game and a half better than that. At 62-71, folks, let's look at this. The Toronto Blue Jays have a better record than the Pittsburgh Pirates. A Toronto Blue Jays team that sold at the deadline, moved Yimi Garcia, moved Yusei Kikuchi. They have a worse record than the Tampa Bay Rays. They have a worse record than the Seattle Mariners, who just fired their manager in Scott Service. This is where the Pirates are. They are 4 games better than the Oakland Athletics. This is where this team is right now. After this month of August, and God, do they need to turn the calendar over, because this month has been terrible. Horrible month. I mean, at this point, if Colorado and Miami weren't as bad, you'd be thinking about the Pirates being the worst team in the National League. It's been awful. Terrible. And I feel like yesterday was just kind of like a mixture of everything that we've seen over the past month. The bullpen, I don't know what to say about it anymore. I mean, David Bednar does not need to be your closer anymore. He just doesn't. If it has to be Chapman, great. If it has to be Kyle Nicholas, great. If it has to be Holderman when he comes back, great. Change it up. Do something to change it. The definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting different results. That is what the Pirates have done over the last month with this bullpen. That is what they've done over the past month with a lot of things that they've been dealing with. And look where it's put them. Folks, a month ago at this time, it is August 29th, a month ago on September 29th, I remember sitting on this show and talking about Quinn Priester being traded for Nick York and people getting upset because the Pirates hadn't made moves to buy at the deadline. A day later, they get Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. They get Brian De La Cruz. They get Jalen Beeks. They get Billy Cook. They move Martin Perez to San Diego. They wheel and deal. A month ago, we were thinking realistically about this team being a wild card team. We were talking about them potentially catching the Milwaukee Brewers for the damn division. And now they have just fallen off a cliff. They've fallen off the cliff, rolled into the pond, and sunk to the bottom of the pond. This is ridiculous. You were up 10-3 against the Chicago Cubs. A team that, mind you, yes, is now 2 games over 500 because of what they did to you, mind you, at home the last 3 days. Yes, I get it. They are one of the hottest teams offensively in baseball. Yes, I get it. The Cubs have talent all across their roster. But you had your 3 best pitchers pitching in this series, and you scored 24 runs, and you're telling me you couldn't win one of them? One. And you were in one of those, you were up by 7 runs and needed 9 outs. And you couldn't do it. It's ridiculous, man. It really is. And it boils down to so many different things. It's systematic issues. It's execution issues. It's bullpen issues. It's offense issues. It's coaching issues. All of it. Because there's arguments to be made that the roster is there to compete. It is a roster that has the tools. It has the players. It has everything potentially that it needs to be a competitive baseball team. And now going into September, you're potentially thinking about this team not even having as good of a record as they had last season with the way they're playing. A season where they barely had a freaking pitching staff. They had Mitch Keller and Johan Oviedo and a bunch of has-beens who could barely throw a baseball. Now you have two of the most electric young pitchers in baseball, a fringe starter in Mitch Keller, among many other things, and you're telling me that you're 9 games under 500? I mean, it's ridiculous, man. I don't know, and you guys know me. I am I'm one of the most optimistic people on this space. But I can't be optimistic anymore because this is the second year in a row and the third time in 4 years that something like this has happened. And there's been something that has been the constant. And we're going to talk about that constant when we come back on this very emotional episode of Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Get 20% off of your first order when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MLB, because when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America, because baseball and the end of summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Blast off with the iconic summer flavors of Popsicle Firecracker, a festive blend of citrus-fueled lemon, lime, tart cherry, and raspberry flavors. I drink it every day. It's so good. Pour it in your water. It's great. And you can find all of your favorite flavors on their website, like strawberry, which I also have. Strawberry is very, very good. And you can even get stuff like acai berry, lemon lime, and pina colada. Tear, pour, and live more, because one stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates you better than water alone. Powered by Live Hydroscience, an optimized ratio of electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients that turn ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. And it's always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. So no more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And also, you can get 50% off this Labor Day for Diamondbacks, Dodgers, and by the way, you can get super deals, and all you have to do is pick an upcoming live event on the app, and you can browse through seats there, and you can go to Pirates games. You have Pitt playing Kent State this weekend in Pittsburgh, so go find the deals because they're there. Because Game Time Picks allows you to curate and make finding stuff easier to save more on sports, comedy, theater, and more. You can get all-in pricing by toggling that feature, and it'll show you your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And the Game Time ticket coverage is the best coverage in the world because it's the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So make sure you go use Game Time for all of your live events this summer and fall. And download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off. And download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And folks, thank you for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. After making Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day, please make Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, your second listen of the day, as he's taking you through everything going on in the world of Major League Baseball as the Fall Classic approaches. And you kind of are seeing Ethan a little more emotional today, a little more uppity about this stuff, because it sucks. I mean, it really does. The Pirates, for the better part now of 30 years, have been on the wrong side of history. They've been the butt of jokes, among many other things. And I don't usually talk about this next topic all that much, because it's a topic that really bugs me a little bit when people discuss it, is year 5 of this. Ben Cherington and company all came in 2020, and, 2020 got ruined by COVID and really a lost season. 2021 is the first full season that they get together, Derek Shelton and Ben Cherington and a lot of the people on the staff, and they lose 100 games. They come into 2022. Same deal. Still building around the core, waiting for guys like Ke'Bryan Hayes to take the next step and O'Neal Cruz to come up here and the pitching to come along like Mitch Keller and Luis Ortiz. Then last year, things changed a little bit. It felt like, okay, they were a competitive team. They had the losing streak against Milwaukee and Chicago that kind of derailed their season. They sold Santana at the deadline. They sold guys at the deadline. Oh, well. But they still finished with 76 wins, which, again, is still not a great season, but it was definitely an improvement. A double-digit win improvement, mind you. And then you come into this season. And in the offseason, we heard this team tell us that things were going to change and this was going to be a competitive team. And for the better part of this season, they have been. They got off to the hot start. Vibes were high. Paul Skeens came up and debuted. You had a great stretch before the All-Star break. And now you're back to 9 games under 500. And I don't even know what really to say about it, because now that you're this deep in this and you've seen a lot of players come along now, O'Neal Cruz I think is on the verge of being a superstar. Truthfully, I do. Ke'Bryan Hayes hasn't panned out like you wished. But then you're also seeing guys like Nick Gonzalez, Paul Skeens, Jared Jones. Hell, I'll even throw Joey Barton there. Luis Ortiz. Kind of taking that next step a little bit. And don't get me wrong, the Pirates do have a lot of pieces that they need to fill. They need a first baseman. They need another corner outfielder. They need a bullpen that can actually do things. But it is a systematic failure what has happened in August this year. Just as it was a systematic failure what happened in the middle of the season last year when they lost 9 in a row to Milwaukee and Chicago. That's happened back-to-back years now, where in a big stretch of your season, you imploded. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it felt like you blew up worse than they blew up Three River Stadium when they were finally busting it down after it wasn't being used anymore. And it's a systematic failure. That's the only thing I can say about it. And when you're looking at what the constant has been, it hasn't been the players. You've had guys that have been here a while, like Brian Reynolds, O'Neal Cruz, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Mitch Keller. You've had those guys that have been around now. They know like where this team used to be and where they are now. But where they are now is unacceptable. Based off of what the organization themselves was telling us before the season. That this was going to be a contending, competitive season. Throw that out the window, because that ain't happening now. And we, as fans, should hold them accountable for that. And really my point here is something has to change. You cannot, and it goes back to what I said earlier, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Right now, what is that same thing? It is the coaching staff. It is the general manager. Something has to change, and fast. Is it Derek Shelton? Maybe. Is it Oscar Marine? Maybe. Is it Andy Haynes? I sure hope so. Is it the general manager? Is it all of the above? These are questions I think that have to be asked when the season is done at the end of September. Because at this current moment, and I will just be completely and utterly transparent and honest with you, I, of course, have been a guy that has supported Derek Shelton and thought that once he got the team there that he needs, that he would take that next step. He just hasn't. And this is a business. This is a job. This is a organization that has not seen a winner in almost a freaking decade. Have some urgency. And I don't know personally what they're going to do, but something has to change. If that's changing the hitting coach and Andy Haynes and getting somebody else in that position, great. If that's firing everybody and starting from scratch with what you have right now, so be it. I'll support it. Because by the day, it is getting hard for me to support this current coaching staff because they just haven't shown me anything. They haven't. Name me one hitter inside the organization that Andy Haynes has made a better hitter. Oscar Marine, you can make more of a case with Mitch Keller because Mitch Keller practically saved his job last year. And Derek Shelton, I mean, I don't know if he is the guy to get this team over the hump. I don't. And I just haven't seen anything anymore that would tell me otherwise. If I did, I would tell you. But this is 2 years in a row now where you were in a contending spot and effectively bounced yourself out of that contending spot back-to-back seasons of this. It happened last year. It happened again this year. The team got better this year. And you're telling me they might only improve by 2 or 3 games? If that now. That goes back to the constant, which is coaching and the general manager. So our change is coming. I would expect something when the season ends. They won't do it now. They'll wait until the season's over. But in my utmost, most honest opinion, something has to change for the ceiling to change. And right now, that ceiling is limited. We're going to discuss that on the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5 because Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going to go off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. And if you're still fancying baseball right now, I'd bet Oneil Cruz on hits every single day because he's on an absolute tear. You can do that on Prize Picks and add that to your pool and go win some money. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive your $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And folks, make sure you check out all Pirates games on SiriusXM. Just search Pirates if you're on the go and listen to all the Pirates games on the SiriusXM app. Folks, the Pittsburgh Pirates, this episode has taken a lot of energy out of me because you guys know that I don't want to get on this show and berate this team and talk crap about people. But at the end of the day, especially now after what happened yesterday, it's very evidently clear that the ceiling of this team is limited right now. Because, yes, you've moved Oneil Cruz to center field. We'll see how that all goes. I thought he looked okay yesterday. I thought he did just fine. But Brian De La Cruz is going to have to prove a lot to them for them not to have to bring in another corner outfielder, which I still think they should anyway. You'll probably bring in a defensive-minded center fielder again, which is perfectly fine. First base probably stays with Rowdy Tellez and Connor Joe. And then enter Endy Rodriguez when you feel he's ready. The bullpen, maybe this is just a bad year, and maybe they come back and are a lot better unit next season. But it just feels like the ceiling of this team is limited right now based off of a lot of different factors. You look at the finances that go into building the team. You look at the coaching staff and what it has or hasn't done over the last season or two. And it just really feels like they're stuck in this weird baseball purgatory where they're a competitive team for all intents and purposes. They're competitive. And we've seen that. They've been in one-run games. They've been leading late in games. They've been playing with everybody and can beat anybody. But it just feels like they kind of feel like, and it's going to sound weird, they kind of feel like the Steelers. They're competitive. They can beat anybody. They can play with anybody. But once it comes to getting over the hump and taking that next step, it just doesn't feel like they've been able to do it. And that's kind of what's going on right now. Is the ceiling just 70-something wins every year right now? And if that's the case, then something has to change, like I just said. And it's not, and I urge people to know this, it is not going to be the players. It is not probably going to be the general manager because I think he's done a good enough job to stick around. So that just goes to the coaches, man. That's where we sit. That's where things are. And yes, the Pirates still do have a chance to end the season on a high note. They absolutely do. But just to collapse like this, like yesterday's game was just pretty much the entire month of August in one game, is what that game was yesterday. And to have a collapse like this, and to just pretty much take the wind out of the sails of your fan base, the players, everybody. Changes have to be made. Something has to be done. There has to be a reaction to it, and a healthy one, not anything drastic. Like either way, if you're firing a coach or doing something like that, it's going to feel drastic either way, but something has to change. And you go into a series against the Guardians this weekend, and it looked like you were going to have a winning record in your homestand and some after that Red series, and you go on the road and that's it. I mean, that's really, I don't know how this team can have any confidence right now. I don't. And we heard Derek Shelton speak yesterday on everything and how it stings and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, folks, this is where they are, and they need to suffer the consequences of it. Whoever they may be needs to suffer the consequences of what has happened over the past month. Will they? Remains to be seen. Because the word of the day for all of this, with every single thing that I've said, accountability. I've brought that up on this show before, and I will continue to bring that up on this show later. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to this very emotional episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Follow me right there on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything that goes on with the Pittsburgh Pirates over the next month of the regular season. You can find the show on all of your audio platforms as well as YouTube. It's free and available to you. And folks, my name is Ethan Smith. See you on the flip side. Have a wonderful Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow.